We are now officially at the halfway point. 2 seasons down, one more season, and a television show to talk about remaining. Only 15 more episodes left to talk about. I have to tell you, it has been an absolute joy walking back down through memory lane, reliving all the memories that I had watching this for the first time and reliving it. But I think here, two very important things happen. One, we reach the peak. There has not, and I don't think there ever will be, another episode of Star Wars television that will ever top this. And two, fans' expectations of trying to get to this point again also reach a high. And I think that's why what we get afterwards, Andor excluded, it just doesn't seem to match with what people are expecting. And I would also say to a lesser extent, Ahsoka, because that was also well received as well. But Book of Boba Fett and Season 3 of Mandalorian, they weren't as well reviewed back then. I'm hoping to change everyone's minds on that, or at least provide a different perspective on that, but that is for the future. Let us talk about the here and the now. Of course, my name is Daniel Strong from QuickTime Reactions, and you have joined me on my way to The Mandalorian and Grogu, in which I am reviewing / recapping all 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, as well as the Book of Boba Fett. And we are here to talk about Season 2, Episode 8, aka Chapter 16, The Rescue. This episode was directed by Peyton Reed, the same guy that gave us all 3 Ant-Man movies, as well as an episode earlier on this season, Episode 2, which was, you said in my review, the least liked of this season. We'll see how he does with this one, as well as the episode being written by Mr. Jonfavreau. The pieces are all in place. All we need now is more help and essentially a game plan as to how they're going to be able to do this. The mission, rescue the kid. But of course, it's not going to be just as simple as getting the kid off the ship. So, are they going to be able to pull this off? We'll have to wait and see. So, yeah, like I said, this is the peak, in my opinion, of Star Wars television. I would say Andor excluded, because that show as a whole, both seasons, absolutely incredible. But we start off with this episode with a chase. The Slave One is chasing down a Lambda-class shuttle that has Dr. Pershing in it, because, well, they're gonna need him and the ship to try and get aboard Moff Gideon's cruiser. I also love the fact that Boba, instead of firing on the ship to get it to stop, he switches his blasters over to an ion cannon that basically acts as one big stun gun on the ship. It stops it in its tracks, and they hooked up to the Lambda-class shuttle, and they board it. And one of the Imperial officers on that points the blaster at Pershing's head, and the other guy's like, hey, we can try and talk out a deal here, and the dude immediately shoots him. He's dead. And then the guy starts poking at Kara, at the fact that she was on Alderaan, and was like, I was on the Death Star. And I love that Kara's come back and was like, oh, which one? and guys just, talking all sorts of crap, saying that I watched every single person on that planet die, all their screams, all that stuff. I saw all that. I witnessed that. And just getting under Kara's skin until it became too much, and she shot him in the face and killed him. And so now they have Dr. Pershing, but they're going to need a little bit more help. So the crew goes to this planet that has like these big smokestacks on them. And Mando and Boba walk in to find Bo-Katan and Casca Reeves, a.k.a. Mercedes Monet's character. And I love the banter back and forth between Bo, Casca, and Boba, because Boba's trying to, they, Casca and Bo-Katan are, saying to Boba, you're not a Mandalorian. You shouldn't even be wearing that armor. And Boba's like, my father gave me this armor. And they say, you mean your donor? And, of course, things get a little bit heated, and Casca and Boba have a fight. And I have to give major props to the stunt team for this, because they somehow managed to work in some pro wrestling in this, which made me so happy. So, Casca shoots her, I'm going to just call it like a grapple gauntlet on her arm. She fires that, wrenches the arm back, pulls Boba in, and hits a knee to the gut, and then hits a tornado DDT with the jetpack. That was awesome. And of course, there's a little deal that is struck. Since Mando has the coordinates, Bo and Casca will help out because, well, she wants the Darksaber, and Moff Gideon has it. So if they have the coordinates to Moff Gideon, Bo will happily go and try and get the Darksaber away from Moff Gideon. As they're going over the plan to try and get on board Gideon's cruiser, Pershing adds a little bit of detail in the fact that there aren't, just a sway of stormtroopers. There's actually quite a few stormtroopers on this ship, as well as the Dark Troopers, which, as he says, takes a few minutes to kind of get ready and get warmed up. And so the plan is to basically take the Lambda-class shuttle and basically wedge it into the launch bay for the TIE fighter so nothing can get in or out. And basically, ladies will wreck shop. Meanwhile, Mando will go and get the kid. Meanwhile, Boba will be trailing them, basically acting as though they're under attack. So everything's going according to plan. I also love the fact that Bo says, try and make your shots look realistic. And Boba's like, oh, you don't have to worry about that. I'll make sure they look realistic. And so they get out of hyperspace, and, they're requesting for emergency landing, and Katie O'Brien's character, receives it, but Gideon says, launch TIE fighters. They'll be able to take care of it. And, of course, Bo and crew are still going for it, and Katie O'Brien's character is like, you have not been given permission to land. And, they're steadfast, and they wedge the Lambda cruiser in the launch bay of the ship. Meanwhile, Boba veers off, takes care of those TIE fighters with relative ease, and jumps back to hyperspace, and he gets out of there. And then we see Bo, Casca, Cara, and Fennec wreck shop with a whole host of stormtroopers. Like, they just clean house of everybody. And I also like the fact that we get a layout of basically the area in which they cover. They have the initial, launch bay area. Then they have a a bridge area, which, by the way, the Empire is not OSHA friendly because it is basically a walkway, no handrails, into an abyss, which basically goes into space. There's that walkway, there's a cargo area, a couple of other hallways that lead to an elevator, goes up to where the bridge is. So you essentially have a layout, considering that we see this again with the Dark Troopers and something special that happens later on in this episode. Meanwhile, Mando makes his way over to where the kid is being held in the brig, as well as going over to where the Dark Troopers are, because they are getting ready, they're getting charged up, so that he can shut the door so that none of them get out. However, when he gets there, one does get out, and he has a mighty tough time trying to defeat it. Blasters doesn't work on him. The whistling birds get him off his equilibrium a little bit, but you know, it just isn't working. Like, one display of how strong these things are is the Dark Trooper has Mando gripped up against the wall, and he's just punching him repeatedly. Now, mind you, he's not doing damage to his face because he's wearing the helmet, but it's literally punching a dent into the wall. Like, that's how strong these things are. If he wasn't wearing that helmet, he'd be dead for sure. But like I said, the whistling birds are enough to get it off its equilibrium a little bit so that Mando could use that Beskar spear to impale it. That was enough to destroy it, and then he gets over, pulls a lever, and the rest of them get sucked out of an ejection bay. Of course, the rest of the team has basically neutralized the bridge, and Bo is wondering where Gideon is. Well, he's with the child in its cell, holding the Darksaber, and he basically has control over the whole situation. Basically explains what on earth is happening. You know, the rest of your team, led by Bo-Katan, they're probably up in the bridge wondering where I am, and so, you know, this is just what it's going to be. And he says, you know, I recognize the bond that you two have, and that is very powerful. So, I'll let you go on the condition that you never return. We never see each other again. And Mando buys into this, but of course it is a ruse because Moff Gideon lays into Mando with that Darksaber. And so we have Gideon versus Mando, Darksaber versus spear. And that Darksaber is not going to cut through that spear because it is a Beskar spear. And that Darksaber can cut through pretty much anything except for Beskar. Hence why when Gideon was swinging it at Mando, he was making sure that the Beskar was what hit that saber. Otherwise, he would have been a dead man multiple times over. The fight scene that happens here between both of them is really, really good. Lots of good creative ways in trying to deflect the saber hits with the spear, which I thought was really cool. In the end, though, Mando is able to get Gideon down, disarm him of the Darksaber, but spares him because, well, as Kara said on the Slave 1, you know, he's ex-ISB. He's going to have a lot of information. I'm going to need him alive. And so Mando brings not only Moff Gideon, but also the Darksaber, and you can immediately see on Bo's face that she already knows the situation. Mando, of course, doesn't. And, you know, Gideon is smiling from ear to ear because, well, Mando beat him in combat, so the saber's now his. But, of course, Mando doesn't want the saber, so he tries giving it to Bo. But Gideon's like, nah, that's not how that works. Because the Darksaber doesn't wield power, the story does. And the story goes that the only way that you get this Darksaber is if you beat someone in combat for it. So that means Mando and Bo now have to fight if Bo wants that saber back, which is going to cause a little bit of problems. Considering that the crew now has even bigger problems on their hands than just, a petty squabble over a saber, the Dark Troopers are back because, lest we forget, they can fly. And so they've all reconvened. They are making their way to the bridge. They get to the bridge and they start punching the door open. And Gideon's like, after a valiant stand, everyone in this room, besides me and the child, they're going to be dead. And I'm going to be the one walking out, my head held high, and as the winner. Plain and simple. And everyone's getting ready. It appears as though the door is about to open when an X-Wing shows up. They try to get identification from the pilot. Nothing. And let me run you through what was going through my head at this point, back when I first watched this. I was like, oh, that's probably like Ahsoka Tano. She probably gotten into contact with someone in the New Republic, like someone that she knew of, and she got like an X-Wing ride to where they are. And then you see the person in a cloak. And I was like, okay, Ahsoka was wearing a cloak. Maybe not as elegant as that one that they're wearing, but she was still wearing a cloak. And then you see the person fighting with one saber. And in my mind, I was like, okay, that Ahsoka lost one of her sabers in her fight with Morgan Elsbeth, and it's still leaning towards Ahsoka. And then you see the color of the saber. It's green. And that's when I had the light bulb moment in my head. Oh no, wait, that's Luke. And then seeing the gloved robotic hand basically double confirmed it. Yes, Luke Skywalker shows up to basically just clean house of every single Dark Trooper. Even he gets his own hallway sequence, similar to what Darth Vader had in Rogue One, like father, like son. Gideon sees all this happen, and he is scared. So much so that the blaster that he hid under his cloak, he grabs it, takes a couple of shots at Bo-Katan, and then focuses his fire on the child. Mando gets in the way of the blaster fire, and Gideon tries to kill himself, but that's not going to work. So Luke is able to make his way to the bridge, and Mando says to open the doors, and, Luke steps in, and, I remember back then it was like, who's going to play younger Luke? It could be Sebastian Stan, it could be, a multitude of other actors, but no, they de-aged Mark Hamill for this part. Now, we have over 5 years of hindsight now to look back on this moment. And I think we can all agree the de-aging is not the best. It is not the best thing in the world. But we all forgave it because this was such a big moment. Luke Skywalker is back and is going to take the child to, continue his Jedi training. But before Mando and Grogu depart, Grogu wants to see the man under the helmet. And Mando obliges. He takes off the helmet to allow Grogu to see that beautiful pedropascal face, and then they're off. But not before we get one more surprise, a cameo by R2-D2, who shakes in excitement over seeing Grogu. And that's where the season ends. Luke having Grogu. He's going to take him to go Jedi training, and Gideon neutralized, and everyone standing tall. So yeah, that is the end of Mando Season 2. Or is it? Because there's a post-credit scene in this episode. We find ourselves back on Tatooine. More specifically, we find ourselves at Jabba's palace. And we see a much bigger Bib Fortuna sitting on the throne. And there's a bit of a commotion going on in the stairwell. And we see that it's Fennec, basically taking care of everybody, even freeing the I'm gonna say slave girl right beside the throne. Then of course Boba walks in. Bib is, so happy to see Boba. He hadn't seen him in years. He had heard all these rumors and stuff like that, but he's happy to see him. Boba, not interested, shoots Bib, gets him off the throne, and now he is the man sitting at the top. And of course, shows after Book of Boba Fett. And flashback to, December of 2020, it said coming December 21. But that will be the next thing that we talk about on this rewatch series. But yeah, like I said, this is the high point, in my opinion, of this whole kind of arc. Because I don't think you can get a bigger moment than this, in my opinion. Like, Luke Skywalker coming back and, going to, teach this kid, and, basically him doing all the things that we want to see Luke do. Like, I just didn't see a way of topping it, in my opinion. And I think that's what people, it's kind of like, addiction. You want to chase after that high again. But if you do so, it's like those special moments don't feel as special. And to quote a very famous character, if everyone had the ability to be superheroes, then, everyone would be superheroes. And when everyone's a superhero, no one is. And it's the same thing with special moments. If every single moment was special, how would they stand out? They just become normal. So, and that's also kind of the way that I felt about the MCU. It's like, people's expectations coming into this new phase, this new multiverse saga, they were expecting, bangers out the gate. Because we had just come off of a phase 3 that had nothing but bangers back to back to back to back to back. But I'm a wrestling fan. It goes through peaks and valleys. Trust me, I know this as a wrestling fan. It goes through peaks and valleys. Every single thing has peaks and valleys to it. You just have to ride it out. You just have to ride it out. And maybe try and find some enjoyment in the ride. And to me, even back then, I was like, this is a peak. This is a peak. I don't know if we will ever get back to this peak ever again. We might get close. And there will be some moments that I talk about in Book of Boba Fett that are really close. But I just didn't see a way of getting back to this. And so, with that high being reached, people's expectations want to get back to that high. And so, when it doesn't meet that, people get mad. People are disappointed. And that's why I think Book of Boba Fett and Season 3 of Mandalorian aren't really reviewed in the best way. But I'm willing to go out there and say that there are actually some really good moments in these two bits of television that I think people overlooked. And I can't wait to dig into all of that. But yeah, that is my review of Season 2, Episode 8. And that is Season 2 in the books. Like I said, 2 down, 2 more to go. And then we'll have the movie. But yeah, next up will be Book of Boba Fett. I'm so excited to dive back into this show. But until then, guys, be safe out there. And remember, always try and find a partner for you, because you never know. You might be led onto a new path, a new way of experiencing life. And it might be for the better. I will catch you guys next time.